Welcome to Supercharged with Jordan Samuel Fleming, your weekly podcast dedicated to what your business can achieve when it's powered by Podio. Join us each week as we learn from the top Podio partners in the world, as we investigate system integrations and add-ons, and hear from real business owners who have implemented Podio into their business. Now, join Jordan Samuel Fleming, CEO of smrtPhone, for this week's episode.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Supercharged. I'm your host, Jordan Samuel Fleming, here to talk all about the power of workflow and automation when your business is powered by Podio. Alright, it is summer. I gotta admit, I've taken a month or so off. I've been doing some things with the family, but podcasting is coming back, and that means a bunch of great new guests. And this week is kind of a fun one and kind of a different one. And because I am welcoming Ellen Sluder, who is the head of marketing for my company, smrtPhone. And the reason I'm doing this very special episode of Supercharged is because I know a lot of my listeners to this podcast and a lot of people who use Podio use text messaging communication, hopefully with smrtPhone. But either way, if you use text messaging and you are using a system like smrtPhone or any other to do it, this episode is an important one for you to listen to because there are huge changes happening in the whole ecosystem of text messaging in the United States. And the first half of this podcast, Ellen and I talk a little about that. It's called A2P10DLC, Application to Program 10-Digit Long Code. The second half of this episode, Ellen and I talk Podio. She's been introduced to Podio because she joined smrtPhone, and I got her into the ecosystem, and we talked a bit about the things she's grown to love and some of the things that maybe made it a little difficult to get off the ground for her. And it's kind of fun. I always love talking to people who I've introduced to Podio and to see that journey of awakening of how amazing Podio can be. So hope you like this episode. It's back to kind of normal service. We're going to be doing some new master classes. We're going to be doing new podcasts. Do make sure you check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, go to your podcast platform, give it a like, give it a share. Those ratings really do help spread the gospel of Podio. Now, on to the podcast. Let's go! Smoothing's a terrible way of saying it. So for the benefit of everyone who God, it's weird actually recording in this room. I've so really record here anymore that it's sort of like I don't like it as much anymore. But for the benefit of anyone who is doesn't know you, why don't you take 30 seconds to introduce yourself to the podcast guests?
Okay, hi, I'm Ellen Sluder. I am the head of marketing for smrtPhone. And I have been, that was my introduction to Podio, was joining the smrtPhone team in early 2021. So I'm somewhat still a newbie to Podio, but I am certainly
starting to love it.
I love it. Oh my God. Not only do I love it, but I have, I think I've told you that my sister is writing a book about an artist. She's an art history person, and she's writing a book about an artist, and she wanted my help to catalog this person's works. And I was like, you need a Podio database, because she needed to match up. And I built her my own database for her. It's amazing. But yes, I love Podio, and we use it for all of our content, calendar, documentation management, documentation library, keeping up with the roadmap and making sure that we have all of the right feature announcements going out. And like I said, blog posts, all that kind of stuff. So absolutely love Podio, but I think I'm a little bit stronger
to begin with. And actually we're gonna split this podcast into two, because I got you now in the hot seat on this. Okay, and I'd forgotten when I had asked you to do this. Specifically, I want to talk to you today because I know that so many of our certainly smrtPhone customers, Podio smrtPhone customers, but just in general, a lot of people use Podio in the real estate industry or in solar industries or in some sales industry where they're doing a lot of communication, whether they're using smrtPhone, which of course they should be, click links, blah, 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 try it out if you haven't already, or they're using something else, to be fair. Either way, there's a huge change happening in the US in terms of text messaging. It's been happening for over a year now, but it's coming to the sharp end of the stick. And I felt like it was time that, certainly given that we've got an audience here for this podcast for Podio, I thought it was time for us to just I wanted to raise the warning flag again. I've been raising it. You and I have been raising it from a smartphone perspective forever, but let's do it from a Podio. Fuck it. Let's do it from Podio perspective as well. A2P 10 DLC. Today, we're going to talk a bit about this. First of all, dive into what it is, why it's important. If you do use text messaging, if you're listening to this podcast and you use text messaging with Podio, you got to listen to this and you got to act on it. So can you succinctly kind of sum up what A2P 10 DLC is?
Okay, well, let's just start with what the acronym stands for. It stands for application to person 10-digit long code. So the application to person part literally means you are using some kind of software or technology to send the text message rather than your own personal phone. And the 10DLC stands for 10-digit long code, which is a US local phone number. So it's not a toll-free number. It's not a short code. It is, and there's a lot of benefits to texting with local phone numbers, which is why most people do it, especially in the real estate industry where location, being local matters. Your area code matters. If you get a text message from somebody, I mean, I live in New York, but I have technically an Oregon area code because that's where I lived when I got my phone number 20 years years ago. And everyone around here is like, oh, 503, what's that? I feel like I'm like, I grew up here. But
it used to cost a lot more money to call. Like when I was a kid, I remember local call versus long distance, right?
And there was a short, medium distance. And
and you used to be able to I don't know if you can still do it, but I remember my New Canaan, because I went to high school. Funny enough, I went to high school with Ellen on this podcast, but I lived in Connecticut, and I remember our number was 9668195. God, please don't call that because I don't know who the fuck has that now. But I may bleep that shit out actually. In fact, I gotta bleep that one out. But anyway, I do remember I could call some people with just the 7 digits, and other people I had to if I want to call New York, I had to go 914. Blah 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 blah. And I think I could talk
to you about the North American numbering plan. I know way too much about that. And it used to be that the first 3 parts is your region. It used to be actually letters. So nearby here is a town called Armonk, so it was AR3, and that's how you did. So I know a lot about numbering and stuff, but and then they had to expand to area codes, and then we have exhausted area codes. So now there's a lot of overlays in different areas. Like Manhattan has something like 7 different area codes, or the whole not Manhattan, but all of the New York City boroughs has 7 or 8 different area codes. They keep adding them. But anyway, the idea is if you are reaching out to someone who doesn't know you, especially via text, they're more likely to pay attention if you seem familiar, right? And one way you can seem familiar is by having the same area code. So that's why 10-digit long code makes a big difference. With short codes, you share it with somebody. They have to remember 2 things, both the 6-digit code and whatever your keyword is.
Short codes is text hello to 64492.
Exactly.
Right? You hear that on radio all the time, as opposed to just hey, my number is 203 blah blah blah, and I'm texting you on your number from my number, and it looks like just a normal number. That's the difference.
And with short codes, it's difficult to text back. It's not really 2-way communication. It's difficult to text back. And then when you have a toll-free texting, while that's totally possible, you seem a little corporate, right? You seem big. You seem like you're kind of floating out in the ether, amorphous. You don't really connect with that person in the same way. It looks like
you're not in my community. You're not in my backyard necessarily.
And then there's other types of texting that businesses use. OTT is called over the top. It's like WhatsApp or Facebook. It's where you both have to have the same app to use it. So 10-digit long code, you don't both have it. Yes, it's application to person, but you don't both have to have the same app to be able to use it. So
essentially, it's text messaging.
Yes, it's just such a valuable tool for businesses to use. But the receiving carriers here in the U.S. have become very sensitive to the fact that your personal mobile text message inbox, whether you use iPhone and you have iMessage, or it's just your regular text messaging inbox, it's become a target for scammers and spammers. And so as part of them trying to protect their consumers, and it's been encouraged heavily by the FCC for them to do this so that they don't, regulation takes time. So this is kind of a stopgap. Regulation is probably coming, but it's going to take some time. So the carriers themselves, the receiving carriers, primarily driven by T-Mobile, who now also owns Sprint, AT&T, and then Verizon is a little bit quieter, but they're in the background. So that means there's only one other carrier, which is US Cellular, and like, who uses that? I mean, I don't want to be mean to them, but they're
hashtag don't fucking sue me because Ellen just slagged you off.
Sorry, allegedly it's not as popular. And then you hear about all these other carriers like Cricket or Mint or whatever, but those are MVNOs. I'm sorry, too many acronyms, but those are folks who actually operate on the networks of the larger people. They just work out a bulk
They're a
deal,
marketing
and then
package.
they pass the discounts on, right? So it really is, in the United States, all of text messaging, it's going through the network of Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, or US Cellular. So those first three, the biggest ones, have decided that they're going to put protections in place. So they can sense through technology. This is my very technical way of saying
they can use technology.
They can use it, but they can tell if the text message has come from another mobile phone, or if it's come like if it's AT&T to AT&T or AT&T to T-Mobile, they can tell. If it comes from any kind of application, any kind of soft phone, Google Voice, smartphone, Ring Central, any of those voice over IP,
batch leads, doesn't matter.
Batch leads, all of that, they can tell that it's an application. They can sense that it's or they have ways to analyze that the A has come into play. It's not P2P, it's not person to person, it's application to person. And they are throttling it. They are throttling that down now, and they are requiring folks that use that method of texting to register and identify themselves so that they can cut down on spammers and scammers. So now we need to get, all of us who are application providers need to get people who are using the system to register. And it shouldn't be so scary, because it's like, I'm a legitimate business and I'm communicating with my customers. That's really all it is. But because it's an extra effort, extra step, people
aren't doing it. That's the problem. Why we're doing this podcast, if I'm going to be blunt to everybody listening here, if you are listening to this and you use text messaging and you use it with Podio, then you know this is happening. A2P is here. It's happening. It affects everybody. And there are very small, easy steps you have to take to make sure you can continue texting and get the results you want, right? And that's all there is to it. And if you keep ignoring it, which is what most of our customers are doing, which that's not fair, not most, which many people are doing. A lot of our customers are doing the process, and that's great. But this isn't one of those things you can just ignore and assume everything's going to be fine, because sooner or later, and the carriers have let us know that they think it'll be this year, they're essentially going to say, hey, you're trying to send a text messages from a system, but you're not registered for A2P 10DLC, and therefore I'm not sending it. I'm not accepting it. I'm denying that. So if you do, if you're listening to this and text messaging is part of your communication bit with Podio, regardless of what system you're using, if you're using Batch or smartphone or anything else, Ring Central, listen to this, go to the provider you're using. Hopefully it's smartphone. But if not, your provider, and go through their simple process to register your company. All you do is you give the basics of who you are, your EIN number, your website, the registered person. You fill in a form that'll take you 30 seconds and you submit it. And that's all you really have to do to then start the process. And when it comes time, once they've verified you and you set up your texting profile, again, the form you have to fill in takes you literally a minute to fill it, like less than it's 5 questions or more, like that's it. So this isn't a process that's scary. It's not a process that is difficult, but it's a process you have to do, and there's really big benefits. Ellen, why, like for me, we've talked a lot about, what do you think the benefits of this are, aside from the fact that you have to fucking do it?
Right. So let's get to the downside, like the what will happen if you don't do it second, but what happens if you do register? So the very first thing is they're actually promising faster text message delivery, larger throughput and stuff. For folks that use Podio, I'm not imagining they're doing a ton of stuff that's like two-factor authentication where you're sending a code, but it's that kind of stuff for a lot of providers that really matters. Someone's trying to log in, they have to get the code in their text message. You want that code to show up immediately, not 10 minutes later. So it's faster, higher volumes, faster speeds, but also the per message cost of registered messages is going to be lower, right? So the fees are going up for everybody. These receiving carriers, any text that is sent, whether it's registered or unregistered, that's coming from the application is going to have now a surcharge on top of it. But that surcharge is about half if you're registered, and it's larger if you're unregistered. So those are the benefits. And there is a benefit that's a little more philosophical. It's the idea that you're buying into a system that is working hard to weed out scammers.
Bad players.
So it's weeding it out. You are participating in pushing those bad folks out of the way so that your text messages actually will eventually get more attention. Now, there is this interim time where sort of everybody's kind of muddled together, but if you get on the right side of history here, you're going to be coming out ahead.
Hey, are you using Podio to manage your real estate investment business? Wait! Click the link to find out why thousands of real estate investment professionals are using Podio plus smartphone to make more calls, send more text, and close more deals. Click the link.
Now, what happens if you don't register? So if you don't register, you're going to have those higher per message fees, and they are going to probably, before they shut it off, I'm guessing, this is my guess, that they're going to have a period of time where they're going to start labeling those texts as scam likely, just like they do for some of the spam phone calls. So they're probably going to label them as scam likely, which hurts your brand. But also, the FCC, everybody is already randomly scanning text messages for violations of TCPA and the communication guidelines that exist and opt-in. They're already scanning for that. What's a better way for them to identify who to look at first than being like, well, this is a bunch of unregistered. They might still look at the registered folks, but they're going to look at unregistered first. It's going to be increased scrutiny, more likely to be caught if you don't have actual opt-in there. And then of course, like what Jordan said, it's going to be actually completely filtered out. They will not deliver it. And they have said they're not going to tell you if it wasn't delivered. So you'll be like, I texted you, what are you talking about? And then you're going to look like an idiot because it didn't actually go through.
It's just one of those things. It's like I was about to say it's like getting your vaccine, and then I realized that there's a whole lot of people who may be listening to this and saying, fuck you, I don't want to get my vaccine.
Right.
But this is just one of those things that it's, like filing your taxes.
Eating your vegetables.
Well, filing your taxes. I don't particularly like paying the government my tax money, but it's just one of those costs of doing business. And if text messaging is a big part of your communication breakdown, then how important it is to be able to communicate effectively like that. Either way, this is an opportunity for you to prove who you are and to make sure you're on the good player side and make sure you're going through and operating the right way, but also just it's your way of making sure that you're going to continue to be able to do texting, because as long as you're abiding by those rules like TCPA, DNC, opt-in, all those types of things, most of the businesses I speak to from smartphone, they want to be good like none of the people I talk to, aside from maybe one or two who we've kicked off our system, quite honestly, nobody that we talk to wants to try and be a scammer or a spammer or that. They want to do business and they want to communicate. And so they're just, so they try and play by the rules as they can. This is one of those things that's really easy to do. The sooner you do it, the better. And I just, it's really important that we do that. And it's really important that you do that. So I'm going to put a link in the podcast to our help documentation that's inside smartphone, where you can read all about it, read how simple it fucking is. It's not like if you've got some sort of weird trauma from your SATs, this isn't it. It's really easy to do. And just regardless of what system you're using, if you're using text messaging, just fucking click the link, read it, and do it. All right. And
can I make a marketing analogy for this? Right. So years ago in marketing, it used to be the thing where you would buy a list and then you would just email the crap out of them, right? And you were like, well, I only spent like $2,000 on this list. It has 10,000 contacts. So only 2 people responded, but that's 2 people that I only, like my cost of sales is still where I want it to be, or whatever it is. And, now there's all these systems that have the junk folder, the junk box, and you can see how that, there's non-deliverability of those kinds of, and you'll be kicked off. Like if you use MailChimp or whatever, and you don't have an opt-in, if enough people complain about you, you were kicked off their platform.
MailChimp will shut that shit down quick.
They do not.
It used to be the Wild West. Email marketing, that's a great analogy. When email marketing came out, it was the Wild West and anybody could do anything. And then all the gates came in, not to stop legitimate things, but to stop bullshit. And essentially business text messaging has been the Wild West for a while now, mainly because, and I learned this from Bandwidth, which is another major player in the US. When text messaging came out, they never really thought businesses would, they didn't really think of business texting. They didn't think about it. And then suddenly it became a really big part of a sales kind of cycle. And now they're just like MailChimp, a great example of Ellen, just like when email newsletters and that kind of came out, we suddenly were like, and we created those barriers to bad bullshit. This is what's happening now. So if you're a good person, you're a good company, you're trying to do good things and you want to communicate by text, fucking click the link, read the documentation and spend the 4 minutes to sign up.
Right. And it really is about the idea that the best marketing and communications plan is a diverse portfolio. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't put all your eggs into cold texting. You don't put all your eggs into cold emailing. You have to reach out with an appropriate marketing message that builds demand, builds interest, and then you use these communication tools to nurture and to bring somebody from an initial interest into conversion. And that's really the best way to be using text messaging. I don't know if anybody listening does have a property that's been that somehow real estate investors have gotten on some of the lists, and you get those text messages over and over and over again. Now, my mother-in-law gets that because she has paid off the mortgage for her house, right? And that makes her a target for real estate investors. She gets text messages all the time, and they all look exactly the same. And there is no differentiation. They're completely cold, and she just blocks. Whereas if somebody had approached her in a different way, she actually is kind of interested in selling her. No, don't reach out to me because I can't get you to her. But she actually is interested in selling now. But she's not going to do it from if to her, she's older, it's weird. She doesn't like
Definitely
it.
That.
But if somebody sent her a flyer in the mail that appealed to her, looked friendly, whatever, she would reach out that way. So you have to have a full marketing portfolio that fits your target, fits your business, and draws interest. So that's why it's good. This should not be anything that any legitimate player is afraid of. But should we talk about the plans? There are options once you do the initial registration.
I don't want to get too deep into this, because the honest truth is you can read guys, the most important thing is go click the link, read the documentation, and fucking do it. It's really not that complex.
I just want to say 2 light things. You have 2 options. One is completely free, and then one costs a little bit, and it's a little bit of a higher level, more sophisticated plan. So you have these 2 options. So not only is it simple to sign up, but it also is free if you choose the standard, the basic option. So the starter package.
Yeah, look, it's really not very complex. We're gonna have the link to the documentation. What I want to get across in this podcast right now, before we're gonna quickly switch over to our Podio discussion for 5 minutes, because I'm curious about that. But look, I'm gonna say it one last time. If you're using texting and you're using a system like smartphone, RingCentral, Batch, whatever, whatever it is. If you're using a system and you want to be able to text message, click the link in the discussion in the podcast, read up on it, and go to whatever provider you're using. If it's smartphone, log in if you're the account owner and go. You've got a trust center that you can follow the directions on the help center. It'll take you 5 minutes to register. Do it right now. Do it as soon as you get off this podcast, and after that, do the like and review and bullshit you're supposed to do on podcasts that none of you motherfuckers do. But I want you to. But no, just stop right now. In fact, pause it and do it, because I just want everyone. I don't want you to lose the opportunity to text for something so stupid. For something so stupid. Now, you just may have heard a ding in your ear which I don't know if you heard that, which sadly is Ellen knows what is coming now. I'm going to let Ellen give a little insight into how she came into Podio and what she felt. And when she's doing that, you're going to see me disappear and do 10 push-ups, which sounds really weird and a weird thing to do on a podcast, but I kind of have to do them. So Ellen, take it away for seconds.
Well, maybe I'll give a little more of the background. So what Jordan's doing is part of a development philosophy that we've put in place at smrtPhone. It's the Pomodoro technique, if you want to Google it. It's the idea of 25 minutes of very focused work, and then you take a break. And when you take a break, you do something physical to like loosen you up and expand your mind so that you can be more efficient and effective. So the team, a lot of people are choosing to do push-ups. Some people are choosing to do squats, whatever it is. So that is where the thing is. So I didn't say anything about Podio. I was explaining your push-up thing. But okay, so Podio, when I first got in, I've worked in a lot of different CRMs before. I've worked in HubSpot. I've worked in Salesforce. I used to work for a business process management tool that was more customized for the healthcare space. So I really understand workflow management and how that goes. Podio was a little bit like,
you weren't 100% sold when you first looked at it, but nobody is.
It was both overwhelming and underwhelming at the exact same time. And it took a while. And I think the best thing that happened in my training was that Jordan didn't actually teach. Well, this sounds bad, but I'll explain it. He didn't teach me anything. He guided me to do all the things myself. So that is really where I really started to understand the power of Podio and what you can do, was by going in there and playing around with it and doing it myself, and getting the muscle memory and being like, oh wait, I remember I can go there. Now I'm using keyboard shortcuts. I'm creating apps, modifying templates. I'm full in. I'm full in on everything except for email, but I'm full in on everything else being managed 100%. Like I said before, we do all of our content calendar. We do all of our documentation library, documentation updates. We keep track of our roadmap in it. And so for me, as the head of marketing, I need to know when new releases are coming and what the descriptions and what the timeline are, and the fact that everything's all interconnected. Everybody can have their own space to play with, but then the spaces talk to each other. The workspace, it's amazing. It's the best.
Well, I watch over the 11 years or something that I've done. I have been building in Podio. I have seen hundreds of people learn Podio, right? I've trained probably hundreds of people. I've shown hundreds of people, but I've also just seen so many people, and everybody goes through a sort of skeptical, because you had a little skepticism of the system, like, is this really going to have the things I need it to be? And I know I still haven't convinced you on the email front, and that's fine.
We'll get there, maybe.
Maybe. And you know what? I've kind of lost I've lost the desire to just fucking slam people into it. But everyone starts out with a bit of skepticism. Everyone who's dealt with other systems, who've used Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever it is, everyone comes up with a skeptical brain. And it's only over a period of time that you see them transform, usually into being, it's sort of the light goes on, and then the light turns into an accelerator where they're just holy shit, now I want to do there. That kind of curve from, that kind of is one you went through as well. Yeah. And I think, and you've now you're going through that with some new people in your team, bringing them into Podio. And how's that been? I think actually
I think that's probably when the turning point came, when Georgiana came on board and we started having a technical writer. So I wasn't writing all the documentation myself, and being able to have a centralized place where we can work on it. Also, we're on a time zone difference. So for there to be able to be this real seamless handoffs. And then we've added now another a content manager to the team too. For team management, that's really where it really my mind expanded, and the collaboration it's absolutely amazing. And it's just we work in a distributed team, you know, like even our team that are all sort of near each other, a lot of people still work from home. And it's almost like our office that we all go into together, you know, like I'm always like posting GIFs and emojis, and, you know, we have like a lot of chatter that goes on in there on the different, you know, parts of the roadmap again, or different places. And it becomes our virtual office in a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's always fun. You know, it's always fun for me to see someone's journey into, you know, Podio and into that kind of accelerated phase where it's like, oh, I can actually do something with this. You know, now, as you say, you're building apps, or you're modifying apps, and you're deciding how you want to track this one thing in Podio, et cetera. And I think that's really great. We're also obviously going to be starting to bring more information into Podio from other parts of our systems, so that we have that one hub of data, because we still, even though Podio is there, we still use other systems. We have to, for, you know, we use, you know, a system called Intercom for our support channel for people. We use other, you know, systems that all have data points. And if you've got that kind of distribution of data across so many systems, it's hard to see the whole board, and Podio can really be that whole board.
So we're currently working with a web consultant to help us with our website, making it more of because even though it's kind of got an e-commerce feel to it, but it's really set up like a brochureware site. So we're trying to make it a little bit more fluid, and he was, when we were doing an onboarding with him, he kept saying, what's the source of truth? What's the keeper of truth? And I was like, what? And I was like, oh, it's Podio. Yeah, like everything goes into Podio. That is our one place that we go into that keeps all of our data clean. It keeps us, you know, all on the same page or on the same item. If you want to use Podio speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The system of, you know, Podio is a brilliant system of record for that. If you are using multiple systems and you can get via the API, you can get some data in, you end up being able to have this hub of all your data in one place, which you can then turn and spin on a dime. And that is, you know, is so important, is wickedly important. Do you have anything that, you know, do you have any kind of things on the horizon of things that you're quite excited about trying to do with Podio? Are you still opening to doing email? Are you just gonna nix it for life? It's okay, you can be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that so we use the Gmail workspace I use it for email. The one thing that holds me back is that I do so much in for the content development. So much of it we use the Google Docs and stuff to share it, and I'm not sure that Podio is the best place for that kind of like commenting, editing, and that kind of stuff. So that might keep me in there. I think one of the things I'm really excited about is I've been talking more with Alex in the past couple of months about developing more dashboards, more marketing dashboards to understand lead generation, and then into trial, and then trial to conversion, and then conversion to upsell, and then retention and churn, and really having that mapped out so we can understand how much do we have to put into the top of the funnel to get the results we want at the back end, and what activities happen at each. And right now, there's some opacity to specifically our lead portion, because we have multiple different teams touching people. So the marketing team touches them, our client success team touches them, and that data is currently not syncing up. So we're working on figuring out how do we get all those metrics and KPIs synced up, so we have a really clear understanding of how many touches does it take to get a lead to a trial, and then what does it take to get a trial to a conversion, and we can really understand that process. So I think dashboards is the area that I'm much more super excited about, or reporting in general, where I'm excited to get deeper into.
Well, I know that one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing, which is a relatively quick hit, and shout out to a Podio partner / smartphone partner, Synchrony, my old team from Game Changers, which is now an amazing company called Synchrony. They're going to do the integration for me. But a little thing, this is just an example of how a little thing can make transparency and ability to understand that much easier. We're going to, of course, hook up our Calendly so that every Calendly event gets plunked into our CRM and gets associated with with a lead or with a customer. and with the agent that's having the meeting, and notes can go in there, recordings of the meeting can go in there. A little bit of integration like that, a simple API integration like a Calendly can suddenly mean that you've got, oh wow, every single meeting that the customers have scheduled with our CSA team is now bam plopped into our CRM. Boom. As opposed to us having to find out, we've got it all there. We can make sure it links up to our customers. We can see that. And that's such a simple, small thing, but it gives you a massive.
It's going to help us. And what's the point of the data, right? The point of the data is to make decisions. It's going to help us understand staffing needs for that CSA position. If we're seeing that every lead that actually does this Calendly demo with our CSA, well, let's say they have like an 80% chance of becoming a client. Well, I'm going to want to push that more, which means we're going to need to staff up. I'm going to start pushing, chats. I'm going to start doing pop-ups on the website, get a live demo, if it shows that ends up, converting better. And so we need that information. So having, again, that one source of truth that allows us to analyze how the business works and the cost of doing business, it's going to really help us just continue to grow at a very sustainable and profitable pace.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Ellen, thank you so much for coming on today. Two things. Number one, of course, I always like to listen to, people's journey through Podio. Yours is a specific one where you're coming in at a senior position and you're having used lots of other systems, you're having to learn it. So hearing a bit about that journey and how you experience and how you've kind of turned from skeptic to kind of evangelist. You're a convert. That's fantastic. And of course, the A2P content that we did at the beginning, A, thank you for coming on and explaining it. And B, a reminder to everybody listening that if you are using text messaging and using a system, please remember to go right now and read it up and do it. It's so simple, but you got to do it because sooner or later, you're not going to be able to text. So it's the easiest thing in the world. It's quick and easy. It won't take you any time. It's not going to cost you any money unless you're going to do specific situations in it. Ultimately, go do it. It's like paying your taxes. Suck it up, do it, and get on with it. So that's my message for today.
Free. Except it could be free. It doesn't have to cost you money.
Well, no, it will. It's either way. It's going to cost you money. Let's be clear. It's going to cost you money because there are charges that are going up, but the charges go way up if you don't register. This is just one of those things. It's like, come on, just go do it. You've listened now. You've heard what it's all about. You've heard why it matters. Go do it. It'll be very quick. And then you can forget about it in a sense.
Yeah, set it and forget it. Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Ellen. I will see you as of today. I will see you next week in Europe.
Yes. Awesome. Can't wait.
All right. Thank you guys for listening and have a great week.
Okay.
You've been listening to another awesome episode of Supercharged with Jordan Samuel Fleming. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to be notified of new podcast episodes, Podio masterclasses, and in-depth Podio extension reviews. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us a review on your podcast player to help support the show.